Hey guys, welcome back. Been a month since I turned this thing on, and I got a little sheet here with some numbers on of what the total cost, how I could have done it cheaper, and how much power it's generated over the this last month. And then we'll go inside and we'll get a little deeper into the graphs and stuff. So if you want to stick around for that, you can, or whatever, I guess. But this cost me a little bit more than it probably would typically, just because I built it to have it so I can expand. And I guess what I mean by that is I made it so that, well, all I did was I buried extra wires from here to the house. Pretty simple, but copper is expensive and it's, yeah, it adds a lot of cost to this. But, when you have the trench dug, it's better to get everything in there, especially if you plan on adding more, which I do. I mean, I want to probably get rid of these panels because that's 800 watts there, not very much. So, and put an array going down here like that. So that would face pretty much west. These ones face south. So, yeah. So that's the part of the reason why these numbers are so big. So my total cost to put this array in was $7,162, and almost 1,700 bucks of that was just the wire. So $2,300 of that was my charge controller that I updated. Now I could have gone with a cheaper one, but this one I can put 4 strings into it. So as I get more panels and upgrade, it should be easy peasy, right? Just plug them in, done. Don't have to, I don't have to spend any more on that portion of it. So if I hadn't built it to expand, I could have done this for around $6,000. Because I still would have had to have somewhere in the trench, right? So there are other options for charge controllers out there, like the Victron also makes one that's a 450 volt 100 amp charge controller. The one I put in is a 200 amp, and that's about half price of this one because it's half the charge controller. So I mean, that would have knocked my price down to about 4,800. And if I'd gone with one that EG4 makes, 500 volts, 100 amp, that thing's 400 bucks. So I would be down to like $4,100 to put this in, to hook it up to my system that I already have. So I mean, there are cheaper options out there where a guy could do it, but this is what I wanted. This is how I wanted to do it. So now when I do my next rack over here, little puppies, my cost is going to be in putting the rack in and the panels. So like when I did this rack, the rack cost me about $1,800 between the rack and the concrete. So if I figure $1,800 over here, and then my panels were $1,200, that's going to put me just under $3,000 to put in another rack. So if I could, mosquitoes, if I could find a deal on some panels again, that would make that a little cheaper. So I'm just gonna keep my eyes open and see what I could find. The other thing that I'm thinking about doing is over along that fence line, putting some in there. So we'll see what happens. But that's kind of the numbers for putting in a solar array like this on your own. Yeah. The one other number that you're probably going to want to know before we go in the house and talk about it some more is it saved me $30 in electricity on the circuits that I have running on this. I tried to average out about 300 watts of draw on it, so I didn't draw my batteries down too much, and that way I knew that, even if the batteries didn't get charged fully in one day, the next day when we had a good sunny day, it would hopefully have everything charged. So yeah, we'll talk about that more when we get inside here. So we'll go do that. All right, guys, this is the part where we get into a few more numbers here. This is my VRM portal through Victron, and you can see we're at like 325 watts that we're using right now. Battery's at 97%. Charger ain't doing nothing. You can see down here at one point it was up to 3,066 watts it was putting out, and then as the batteries got full, it started clipping, and that was what it did for today. So we'll scroll down here. So we'll go here today. So you look at the graph here. This is early morning. Sun starts coming up, starts making a little power. Then the sun hits the panels, and we get about 2 hours of hitting some pretty good numbers for charging. And then the battery's full, and it starts clipping, and we're back down to not much. So that was today. Kind of same thing yesterday, day before. We'll go into the last 30 days. That'll be from the time I started the panels, once I got them put in, to today. So at the beginning, I was kind of messing around with trying to see how much I could get out of those new panels. So I didn't have the old panels wired in for like the first week, and I was really trying to draw the batteries down, especially if we were going to have a sunny day, and then get as much charging as I could. So the second day was probably the best day, in that we got 20.89 kilowatt hours of solar. The last 2 weeks, I haven't really done anything with it. I tried to get about a 300 watt load on it that's fairly consistent throughout the day. And you can see one time where it went down. That was when the dehumidifier kicked on, and because it was pretty humid for a few days there. And then it went back to normal. But even then, the batteries were at 100%, so it did pretty good. Last night, power went out for 5 hours, and we're still got up to 100% today. So we did pretty good. This is the numbers for the last month. So 271 times 11 cents is $29.81 of electricity that I consumed, that the system created and I consumed. So we'll say $30, and 341 by 11 is 37.51. So about $7.50 worth of losses on converting from DC to AC, going from the charge controller to charge the batteries, pulling out of the batteries, running the inverter, running the charge controller, and all the other equipment associated with that. So you're going to have that on any system that you're going to lose some power somewhere. So I think that was one of the hardest things for me to wrap my mind around, was the losses on charging. Um, Now that I have the big array, I I kind of understand it a little better because I can see it. I can see it happening. Where with the little array, I knew it was happening because I couldn't keep up with the just keeping stuff running. Because if you go, well, I didn't have them in a very good spot. But if I go to today, go yesterday, there. So yesterday we made 6.4 kilowatt hours, and today we consumed 6.4 and we made 7.9. So that's 1.5 kilowatt hours, and I was only making like 600 to 800 watts with my old panels. So I was having to charge everything off the grid quite a bit. So with the new panels, I haven't had to do that. And that's kind of my goal, is to keep from having to flip that switch on to charge from the grid. So at $30 a month, Payback's going to take a very obnoxious long time. And I know that's the question in a lot of people's minds of, what's my payback going to be? When am I going to start actually saving money? And for me personally, I'd like that, but more importantly, I view this as a backup system. It's kind of like having like a Generac propane generator with a transfer switch sitting there at the ready for when the power goes out. The only advantage I have is I am going to get some payback because I'm going to be running some loads off of this all the time. So even so, at that, the payback is still not very good for me yet, because I need to get to where I can have the panels working at their full potential, which means I got to draw the batteries down a little bit farther. And before I'm really comfortable doing that, I really need to understand the system, and that's just going to take time. Um, we're September 9th right now. We got a couple of months before we get to the winter equinox, or the shortest day in December, and then we got to get through that before I really think I'll totally understand the system. But getting back to the generator, if I was to put a generator in, and I would have to have it installed instead of having my little manual generator transfer switch down in the basement by the breaker box. I would have to have a 200 amp automatic system installed out on the pole. So there's going to be a lot of cost involved with that. So for me, I would have to have about a 22 kilowatt hour generator, and they run about 6,300 bucks right now. And the installation, just I did a quick look online, just trying to find some numbers, and it could be as little as $3,000, maybe a little bit less, upwards of $5,000. I don't know what the difference is as to why they would be that much of a difference. But if we take $3,000, I'd still have to have a propane tank. I don't have a propane tank. Rental on a propane tank is free as long as you get it filled once a year. So I'd have to have a propane tank put in, installed. Um, I could probably run the lines, but just to have the propane tank filled at $1.44 a gallon is going to be like 580 bucks. So you're looking at kind of a minimum of about 10 grand to 12 grand for putting in a generator. On my system, for what I've spent, I'm looking at upwards of north of about $16,000. So if you go $16,000 and you say the installation of the generator is 12, it's kind of hard to really say what the payback is and to justify it. If I was grid tied, it'd probably be way different story, because there wouldn't be any clipping and it would dump all the power back into the grid. But I'm not doing that because I don't want to. I want to have my grid, my solar system separate from the grid, just because you don't know what's coming down the pipeline, and if you're connected to the grid, who knows? They might have ways to screw you over. The one thing I think I do have working in my favor is our electric power right now is the cost is 11 cents a kilowatt hour. And I mean, it's in my favor in that my payback would be less, because in the state of Minnesota, they have the um, where they're in 12 or 13 years, they want, you know, all the power coming from renewables. And that's just going to be more expensive. So I'm expecting my power bill to go up by quite a bit in the next few years as far as the cost per kilowatt hour. So that's kind of why one of the big factors as to why I've been working on this. Um, and one of the reasons that my cost is higher is because I'm building it to be able to expand it, to upgrade it without having to incur more costs. Uh, be able to keep my costs down when I do upgrade it. So I my charge controller, I can put four strings on that. I have two strings on there right now, the new panels, the old panels. The old panels are either going to go away and be replaced by new panels, or I'm going to add more of those panels. The only thing I'm fighting with myself on is those old panels are expensive compared to buying new panels, because I bought the new panels for $150 a piece, and they're 535-watt bifacials. The old panels are 100-watt panels, and I paid about $100 a piece for them. And that's kind of what they're going for right now. They're a little bit less, but I mean, they're good panels. Renogy, you know what I'm talking about. They make good stuff. They're more focused towards the mobile applications, I guess. Uh, but then so is Victron. But they they're a good panel. I like how they come shipped. You know, they're well packaged, and I've never had a problem with them. So there's that. Um, and then I have room to add two more strings on there, and I've already ran the wire basically from the house the uh, out to the ped out there to be able to add those other two strings. So by putting the charge controller in and those, the wires, my cost for that part is going to be pretty low. You know, figured I had to dig the trench, I might as well dig it once and spend the extra money to run the wires, which, what was it, about $400 per wire out there. So I mean, it's quite a bit up front, but it's already there. So to upgrade and expand, which is what I like about the Victron stuff, is I can do individual components and upgrade them when I need to. So yeah, that's uh, that's kind of my system, how it's doing, where it's running. Um, One of the things that I think a lot of people miss with doing solar is they go out and they buy the biggest system they can, put it in, but they don't do anything to mitigate the amount of power that they're using. And this is an idea that is always in my head, that came from uh, one of my best friends from many years ago that passed away. Uh, he had gone off grid. They went completely off grid. They had the power company come pull the transformer down and everything. They went off grid, and they did that for quite a number of years. And one thing that stuck from what he told me was getting your power, so everything that you're using is as efficient as you can. And that's something that's kind of stuck with me. I've been working on it for the last few years. Um, if you go back and you watch my video on the Takeo um, VT 2018, the circulator pump for the wood stove, that's kind of part of that whole thought process, as trying to get my power down. I started out when I started out doing this whole thing. I started out with the mindset of I'm going to do the solar thing, but I'm also going to try to get everything as efficient as I can so I don't have to overbuild my solar to the point of where it's just obnoxiously big, for what I really need. So I've been working on that. Um, and it's a slow process, but you know, I put that ECM motor on the wood stove. I put ECM circulator pumps on my uh, system in the house because it's like two separate systems. One, it just has a plate exchanger to transfer the heat, and then things like make sure when I fire the wood boiler up, I turn the water heater off, and I had to rewire my electric boiler downstairs because when the system would be sitting for a while and first fire up, it'd be, oh, the water's all cold. So it would start making the power pole out in the yard spin around because it's calling for heat for the electric boiler before the water starts circulating from the wood stove through the boiler, heating that up. So I had to rewire that so I could turn the actual boiler off unless I actually need it, and then have all my pumps and everything still working. Um, doing things like that. Little things like, they always say phantom loads, unplugging the stereo because I don't hardly ever use that. Um, Things like that. I've been working on. So the first year, I was able to, I actually dropped my energy usage by like 30% the first year. And I haven't looked what I'm at this year, but if I can be at that or even a little bit below by the end of this year, I'll be happy because my goal is 10% a year. My goal this winter is to have more than 1 month of my electric bill from the power company being under $100. Now, $55 of that is the base charge or equipment charge or whatever you want to call it. So if I can do that, that would be awesome. Uh, I do have an idea on a project that I'm going to be working on here in the next couple months to try to get so I can hit those numbers this winter. Um, you know, everybody knows that your biggest power gremlins are your things like your water heater. Um, I run a dehumidifier that, well, we actually run two of them in the winter generally, one upstairs, one downstairs. And then the electric clothes dryer. Uh, what else? Those are the biggest ones. So I already have the water heater on a sidearm heat exchanger with the wood stove. So that's out of the equation. Um, Kind of have to run the dehumidifier, but I am working on something to hopefully make it so that I don't have to run that as often, or it doesn't, it's automatic. So I don't have to run that as often. And then the third thing is the clothes dryer. And we have an electric clothes dryer. So one of the guys I work with and we talk way too much when we're out driving around on our headsets. talking about crazy ideas of things, and I think we've come up with something that might work really well to get it so that the dryer doesn't use near as much electricity. Because I don't think I can convince my wife to go out in the blizzards and hang the clothes on the clothesline because I wouldn't want to do it and I wouldn't expect her to do it. So she's not necessarily always on board with some of my crazy ideas. So if I can mitigate her not wanting to do it, where it's the same for her regardless, then she'll be okay with it. So I, I got an idea that we're going to run with here in another month or two. I had a month before I fire the wood stove up. So then I'll start working on it. Anyways, I'm rambling. For those of you who have subscribed uh, and are still watching, I don't know why. I really don't. Uh, but I thank you. And for anybody that's not subscribed and still watching, maybe hit the subscribe button for me. I'd appreciate it. I do appreciate everybody that subscribes, and I think it's really kind of cool.